Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. So you can see that we kind of have a different desk color today, and I did not get a new desk. This is actually my old desk, but I decided to take white vinyl and kind of like refurbish my desk a little bit. You probably have seen like in past videos that I always have like chips and like paint peeling off and stuff off my desk, and it's because the paint really lifts if anything really sticks to it, like a piece of scotch tape, washi tape, anything will peel it off. So I decided that for summer, and I guess for the rest of my life with this desk, I will leave it with this white vinyl color, so it's just easier for me to clean. Also, I just like white because it kind of brightens up my room a bit, and it matches with my shelves because I have white shelves in my room as well. So yeah, if you don't like the white background, I'm sorry. I'm not going back to the dark brown. So let's talk about today's video. I'm working in my sketchbook today as it is Monday, and I'm showing you guys quickly what the supplies I'm going to be using for today's drawing. So I have the red palette Color ENO, which is 0.7 lead, I believe, as well as this Chinese black ink, which I actually don't know what the brand is or if there was a brand. I just took it from my dad because my dad did a lot of like Chinese calligraphy. And I have this pen nib holder, and this one is specifically from, I think it's like Lewis Creations Moblique. So basically it's a 2-in-1 pen holder, so it holds these pen nibs you can see here. And I kind of bought it for two reasons. One, or I guess three reasons. I bought these nibs and I just clicked on JetPens. JetPens is where I got them, as I wanted to buy some small like stationery gifts for friends. So I decided to make an order, and I decided to get something for myself as well. But you can see that this nib holder is a little bit different. It can store the nibs inside the barrel or the base, or whatever you want to call the base of the pen, so I don't lose the pen nibs, because I definitely lost my old ones, because I used to have a pen holder and nibs from my uni days, and I've lost them from moving back home. So yeah. The second reason obviously is the color. It's really cute. It's a nice mint color. And then 3 is actually because when I was buying nibs on their website, I just clicked to see what was compatible. Now, I didn't really know if there was a difference between, let's say, a pen holder meant for calligraphy, I guess, or a pen holder that's meant for like comics, if that makes sense. I believe they do have different ones. There's ones for like, I think, comic making, manga making, and calligraphy, but I'm not sure if the body really affects those things. I do think the body was a little bit too thick for myself, because I usually have like thinner pencils. I've been trying my best to find a bit of a bigger barrel for my pencils and stuff, just because I kind of have a deft grip sometimes when I'm working throughout like long periods of time, so my hand tends to cramp. So I want to make sure I can switch it up so I don't get into that state where my hand really hurts from drawing. Yeah, I decided to put a nib in. I did wipe it down. I saw different articles saying you could use acetone, rubbing alcohol, or there's like one other thing you could use. I used rubbing alcohol and diluted it with water to carefully take off. I believe there's like a coating on the nibs, so I did that, and I do it before I use it as well, so because my grubby hands tend to have oils and stuff, and I don't want to affect the ink or the way it flows down the nib. Yeah, I didn't do too much research. I have basic knowledge on it just from what I've searched up in the past, and just like knowledge about general care and stuff. But I wanted to give drawing with, what is this considered? Let me check really quick. I know this is a pen holder. Comic nibs, I guess? Kind of like a dip pen almost. Because, I don't know. I do like working on drawings traditionally a lot. I love sketching traditionally. I like painting if I can, but one thing that is both in my digital and my traditional work is that I really don't like inking, and I feel like I don't like it for a different reason than I think some other people might think. First, I don't really like my line quality, and I think a lot of people kind of share that same sentiment about their own line work. Like, you always like someone else's line work a lot better if you don't do line work like that often, I feel like, or if you're not as comfortable. So yeah, that's just something we're just gonna have to fight against. But another thing is that I don't really like how restrictive I feel like line work makes my artwork. But when I really focus on line work and kind of make it the main focus, I actually really enjoy inking. I like adding lines and thickening things and kind of like giving things line weight and all that jazz, and kind of playing with values where you're not really given like a mid-tone. So you're basically creating value by only, is it black or is it white basically, or like the thickness and the thin of like spacing between lines, if that makes sense. Like if you're hatching, the closer the lines are, the darker the area will be, and further spaced they are, then it'll be a lot lighter. My brain's like super scrambled. If you guys like watched, I think Saturday's video, one thing is that, actually it's still Saturday today now that I'm realizing it. I have another 17 concert I have to watch later tonight, so my brain's gonna be like super confuzzled for the next few days, because the concert's at 3 a.m. this time instead of 4 a.m. and it's 1 a.m. right now as I'm recording this voiceover. I just went on the longest tangent. Okay, let me think. Yes, okay, liking inking. So I do like inking in terms of the same way how I kind of like treat pencil when I'm doing my final lines, if that makes sense. So usually when I sketch very rough, kind of like fill in details, and I often don't erase too much because I don't want to accidentally erase something like I potentially did like or I could see potential in, and I try to just build on the lines that I do have. So whenever I want to kind of like refine or finish off like a sketch where I'm putting a little bit more detail, making things darker and making them look a little bit more clean or clear, I go into state of like, I choose an area and like start detailing things and making things darker. And when I'm inking Reimu today, I didn't mention who I was drawing. I'm drawing Reimu, Reimu Endo. She's another VTuber, part of Niji En, and I don't know, I really like drawing her recently, and I've always loved watching her. She's very funny, also like knows a lot of languages and stuff. I don't know, I think she's just very cute in general as well. So, and I like her energy. I think this is nice. She's very comfortable to watch in my opinion. So yeah. Backtracking, what am I thinking? Yes, so when I'm inking, you can see that when I sketched out Reimu, I actually have like a lot of sketch lines like laid out. I have a lot of the form and the lines that I do want to keep present, and for the most part like everything's laid out. But when I get to work with ink, or if I decide to go in heavy with pencil, I start to detail a lot more. I can add values, and that's when I can kind of play with the lights and the darks, as well as like the thickness of lines, and kind of emphasize some areas. So another thing that I wasn't really used to is that when using this kind of like pen, I wasn't sure how to hold it. I know that the barrel, or like the curving part of the pen, faces upwards, and like, is it, I don't remember which one it is, concave, convex. You can see how I'm holding it basically. There's like a certain way so that ink can flow properly, I believe, and that when you're using it, you should always be pulling it towards your hand. You should never push against your paper, like kind of like forward, otherwise like your nib kind of like digs into the paper and probably gets stuck. You also damage the nib, you damage your paper, etc. But I noticed that when I was using the pen, I would tilt it on its side. Now I don't know if this is going to be a bad habit for me, but I do not really utilize the flexing of the nib. So these nibs often can flex. I think the different kinds of nibs you can get will also vary the amount of flex you get. And when I'm talking about flex, or at least from my knowledge, like I said, I have very basic knowledge. I don't even know if I'm using the right terminology here, but when you press down harder using kind of like these nibs, the nibs have like two little pointy parts at the end of it. So when you push down, they kind of separate. So when they separate, they actually dispense more ink. Like more ink flows down the tip of the pen, making a thicker line. So when you put less pressure, you can get those really fine lines, which I mostly use today in Reimu's drawing. And a lot of the thinner lines that you can see, I did mostly for like the blushing area, a bit of the texture for her hair, and any hatching that I did for like the hair-ish area. But the thicker lines you can see is that when I was doing, I think, like the little hat creature that like resides on Reimu's head, as well as her sleeves, there was some areas that were a lot darker and got a lot thicker, and it was kind of due to how I was holding the pen. Like I said, because I was holding it sideways, it didn't really allow the pen to really like flex, which kind of caused a little bit of an issue if I want to learn actually how to use these pens properly to get line weight variation in one stroke. But yeah, if you guys have more knowledge on using these kinds of pens, do let me know. I'll definitely do a little bit more thorough research if I ever get into wanting to buy other nibs. So the nibs actually I was using, I'll probably leave it in the description because I probably forgot to mention it earlier, is that I'm using, I believe, is the Nikko comic pen nibs, and this is just the G model, and it came in a pack of 3, and I clicked on this, put it in my cart, and I looked at the compatible nib holders, and I'm basically using whatever I could find that I liked the best. And I don't know if I talked about this. So the pen earlier I showed you guys is that the pen also can come with this little attachment, and it kind of makes it, I think it's called an oblique pen. I could be wrong, but I think that's the whole point of the name, is that it kind of offsets the pen nib placement. So that's on the side of the barrel, or like at the end, but at the side rather than directly at the very end. So basically what I remember from when I was actually looking at the pen holder is that if it's directly at the end, like a normal, I guess, like dip pen or pen holder that you probably have seen, most likely I think it's considered a straight, and if it's kind of like offsetted, then it's considered an oblique pen holder. I could be wrong. But yeah, I thought it'd be neat to try out both eventually. I decided that I wanted to use only the straight for today, just because I wanted to test out using the nibs, as well as just being comfortable kind of like re-inking my pen every so often, like re-dipping my pen every so often, so that I could know how much my nib pretty much can hold. So when I first started using this, actually you have like kind of like a scratch page or like a note page on the back side of Reimu, so I could test out the ink flow and stuff, and I noticed that it wouldn't hold a lot of ink. But the more I've used it, wiped it down, cleaned it, I noticed that probably the coating was preventing the ink from being able to stay on the nib and being held, so that it has some kind of like reservoir. But now at the ink, I can see that I actually don't have to dip it as often as I needed to at the very beginning. So if you're planning to get one of these nibs, or like, yeah, basically these nibs, make sure to clean it. I know some people burn the tips with a flame so that you can get rid of the protective coating, so that your ink can flow down better. So for Reimu, for the most part, just simple inking. It's very similar to how I ink with other pens. I do like that I can get a little bit more line weight variation. I can get thick and thin. So I'm trying to utilize some of the thicker lines that this one can produce by outlining Reimu like as a whole. So I actually didn't press out as hard as you probably can with this pen, so that you can make it flex more. I was a little bit scared to really dispense too much ink on this paper, because this paper is really thin, so it can't hold too much ink. If ink pools, then there's like a lot of either heavy ghosting or just bleed through right away. So yeah, I kind of did these weird little hatching hatching patterns around Reimu. I've done these in the past, and I've seen other artists do it too. I don't know if there's like a rhyme or reason for the placement, but I've done these for doodles in, I think, other pen doodles that I've done in the past sketchbooks and stuff. It's just a good way to fill up space, especially if you want to kind of fill in some kind of value. And I'm deciding to add a little bit more hatching around her, just to kind of make her pop from the background, just in case if the background becomes a little bit too busy. And I noticed that before I wanted to say that Reimu was done, I didn't really do her sleeves, so we're gonna tackle those as well. And yeah, I had a lot of fun working with this, actually. I do want to see if I can get familiar with inking with a dip pen super comfortably and try it on watercolor paper, see how it reacts, and maybe it may be a nice way to make another illustration where I can confidently ink a little bit better. Because another thing that I don't really like about inking is that I am very picky with pens. Whenever I'm using like pens in my sketchbook, I gravitate towards like needlepoint pens. I like the consistency, constant ink flow, and all that when I'm doing like the line work, or yeah, basically any line work. But for like watercolor illustrations and stuff where I used to do line work, I used to use like ballpoint pens because they wouldn't really like smudge or budge that much when I dilute it with water, or like, you know, sprayed a whole page with water. But it wasn't dark enough for what I wanted if I wanted it to be line art on its own, because it kind of does feel like it gets washed out. But then I switched to using also, I think it's like microns and stuff, like those kinds of like technical pens. And technical pens, I used to burn through them so much because I used to have such a heavy hand when inking. I don't think that I don't have a heavy hand at this point, but I know how to control it so that I am more conscious about not breaking the tips of these technical pens and stuff. And sometimes technical pens, they just don't dry very nicely. I feel like sometimes they're unpredictable. And for me, using this Chinese ink, like I think it's like calligraphy ink or something. I don't know. I took it from my dad. He let me take it though. But yeah, I find it similar to kind of like Sumi ink, and I've done ink washes with the same bottle before, and I can kind of trust it. Like the ink really doesn't budge. I also don't really worry about it being too slow drying, I guess, if that makes sense. I can usually tell if the paper is wet because of the sheen and stuff, so it's just kind of like, I'm trying to find out like more of a foolproof way for me to not hate doing line work potentially for painting. We'll see how I get there, I guess. For the final little things for Reimu, I decided to take my palette Color ENO and color in some of the areas for Reimu. So it's kind of like scarf, the nails on the little critter behind her, as well as her eyes, a bit of her cheek, as well as her sleeves. But yeah, that is Reimu. And here is a close-up. I want to try inking like this again. I want to see if I can get better and a little bit more cleaner lines, and being a little bit more focused when I'm hatching or adding areas that need to be darker via lines, I guess, line width, cross hatching, all that jazz. Hopefully today's video isn't too rambly. Like I said, if you're interested in doing something similar to this, please do your own research. Everything I said here, just, you know, it's just kind of like a conglomeration of just knowledge and things that I think I remember. But yeah, there's my test pages and stuff. I'm covering up some thumbnails that I'm doing for a zine. But yeah, I'll talk to you guys next time in the next video. Bye!